Hi, this is Better Half Hobby, and we're going to be testing out Reaper's new super washes. I have played around with these for a bit at ReaperCon, and we bought the swag bag that had them all in them. We bought these, we were not given these, so our review or opinion is entirely free of any kind of bias on that. I have painted a couple of miniatures before, so I'm going to show those off. And then I'm going to paint one as quick as I can on stream. And then my other half is going to sit down and she's going to paint one. She has not played with them at all. So before we start, I want to just say a few things about them. One, the name Super Wash is really stupid because they are not washes. So let's just get that out of the way right now. They're not washes. Second, excuse me. Second, there are 12 paints so far. We have 2 reds, a couple of browns, a yellow, a couple of blues, a yellow, a black, and a bone color. I have done some testing and was able to mix colors together, so that's a good thing. I was also able to thin them down a lot and turn them into washes. I was also able to layer with them and they did not reactivate. In application, I found them pretty similar to Army Painter Speed Paints. They're a little bit more sticky and stay where you put them, whereas like a contrast paint tends to be more runny and fluid. So I'm going to show you some of the guys that I did at ReaperCon, and you can look at them. Let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, so everything on this guy, except the metallics, is speed paints. I blended that color. Sorry. Super washes, not speed paints. I keep getting the name wrong because super wash is such a bad name for them. So I'm gonna try really hard not to say this, not to get it wrong multiple times. But here we go. So super washes. So this guy I painted entirely with super washes. I mixed the color that is his shirt, that orangey color. I layered several of the greens on top of each other to get the skin. And yeah, I mixed the white and I mixed the black superwash together with regular white paint to get that gray down there at the bottom. It worked pretty well. Obviously there's no metallic superwash, but that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody who's familiar with this line of paint because there has not been metallics from any company. So then I also worked on this guy. I did not finish this guy, but this is all superwash also. You'll notice that with this big area here, there's not as much shadowing and recess shading as you could see with other things. It's the same with the leather color on his like jerkin area here. There's something about these paints where if you use them at the thickness that they come and you apply a thick coat, they just don't do their thing. You have to either water them down a little bit, or, which I was able to thin with water perfectly fine, or you have to be very careful with your application of the paint and make sure your layer is very thin in order to get them to truly do the recess shading. Okay, let me show you one more and then I will get started here. Ignore the rest of this bug because the rest of this bug, the shell and stuff, I have gone back and retouched up. But the base here, this is a wet blend of several of the different browns in the superwash. And you can see over such a large and textured area, it worked pretty well. And it did wet blend to an extent. So there is that. I will say, before I redid the shell here, I did this with the super washes, and you have the same problem over large smooth areas that you do with any of the other variants of this, be they contrast paints or Army Painter speed paints, and that's that over large areas you're going to get pooling and it's going to look bad, which is why I ended up going back and retouching this. Plus, I wanted to try something out from another class. All right, I'm going to set those aside, and I'm going to pick up one of these, and I'm just going to go at it. So I'm going to use a Winsor Newton number 1, if anyone is curious what size brush I'm using. And I am not watering these paints down in advance. I'm just going to go. So my wife and I decided that we have a bunch of these demon devil looking guys, and we're going to paint them all a little bit different, but we are going to try to keep their skin all the same color, and that color is going to be Templar red. So I am going to start with Templar red, and we're going to lay down what I hope is going to be a thin coat of Templar red in order to get that paint to do its thing. So I've heard and have limited experience with speed paints and more experience with contrast paints, but what I have heard on the YouTubes, as the kids say, which I'm sure they don't actually say that, that the way to do this is to always work from a wet edge, which, as I'm sure those watching who know what to do are looking at me and going, he's not doing what he said he's doing. But I think the idea is that, like, you're always spreading paint along a wet edge like that. So according to Reaper, you're supposed to prime your minis a light color before you do this, which that matches up with the things that you've heard from the other companies that make similar products. We have just used a white airbrush primer over these, and I was not super careful, as you can see by the parts that are still grayish. You can see I made a little mistake there. We're going to see if we can clean that up real fast, because that is one of the problems with these types of paints, is that if you make mistakes, they are not super easy to clean up later. So do that, and then we will just continue to put red on this guy. I just realized that that's his spine there, and maybe I should not have painted his spine red. But that's okay, we're going to keep going. Maybe I will put some brown over the top of that, and we will have kind of a layer going on there. Alright, let's get his face. And
mind if I jump in and say a few things?
Sure.
So, I know you may be wondering, like, when are these things going to be up for sale? Like, what's the deal with them? So, they were basically released at ReaperCon as a test demo soft release of sorts. So you could get them there, and they are actively seeking feedback on these. This is likely not their final iteration.
Hopefully the name changes.
Yes, you have told Ron, the art director at Reaper, how you feel about the name.
Because we all know he values my opinion.
Exactly. So yeah, they're not going to be for sale now. They are not going to sell them individually like they are some of the other swag from ReaperCon. They are probably not going to release these in the near future, because I think that they are still kind of testing and tweaking. But for anyone that does have these and are wondering what are they good for and how to best use them, we thought maybe this video could help a little bit.
Or maybe get those Reaper fanboys hyped about getting more paint. Because if there's one thing we know, it's that you can never have too much paint. Alright, so just working around, trying to do the thing where you don't make any mistakes, and that's going moderately okay for me. I have made a couple, but as you can see, I'm just getting my brush wet and going back over those areas. And while they're not going away entirely, they are going away enough that the next coat that goes down over the top of it will probably be enough to cover it up. So we do have a little bit of a problem with these paints being so wet and flowy, though, like I said, in my opinion, not as flowy as contrast paints, that they want to spill over into areas where you did not intend to put them. And I don't know what to tell you about that. It is a problem working with all of these speed paint type paints, which in some ways makes them kind of bad as speed paints. Don't know if you can hear our dog going in the background. I'm sure someone across the street has decided that they're gonna walk around or something in her neighborhood. Yeah, so I was saying it can make them kind of bad as actual speed paints because you have to kind of let them dry before you can mess with them anymore. If you try to mess with them before they're dry, they just kind of make a mess. So it can kind of be a little counterintuitive. I just realized that I got it all over their horns. Well, we'll see what the bone wash will do to the horns. Perhaps it will blend together and we'll get a little bit of like a fade or something. Wow, my brush has really lost its pointy tip. A tip for anyone buying brushes. I told probably a dozen people at ReaperCon about this, and every single time I told someone, they seemed very surprised. But if you buy fancy brushes, which, I mean, who doesn't like fancy brushes, and you buy them on Amazon, you are running a chance that that is not going to be an actual fancy brush, that you're going to get a knockoff. So, just something to be aware of. So, as you see here, I am now switching to a different paint. And we're doing this guy with like a...
What color is that?
That is Drow Violet. That is Drow Violet. The red color we use, I don't know if I said it earlier, is Templar Red. And I managed to get some on the red. So we'll see how well I can clean that up. It seems like it came up okay. I guess that area was dry enough, and I put a little bit of red over the top of it to try to hide that that little wash line bubble effect. I'm going pretty fast here because I feel like that's what these paints are like designed for, what they're marketed for. So I'm just trying to see like how fast I can paint, and this is a relatively simple model. Alright. There's that. Let's do some leather brown. And we'll do that on this stuff here.
Like the belt.
The belt in his little side pouch. I think probably I'll come back later on these little side bits and on his gauntlets, bracers, and I'll probably put some metallics there instead. But we're going to fill in all those little areas with the brown, so that the brown will be in all the shadows. So here we got an issue. We've got the red that's pooling under here, and like I want that area under there to be brown because it's part of the leather, but it's still wet from the red. So if I touch it, it'll get messed up. It's part of the reason why I don't really use these kind of paints. You're not going to see a lot of me like go into this kind of stuff. And in the past, when I use contrast paint, I'm most of the time using it through my airbrush. I do see this as having a market of people that will be interested in it. I just don't know that I'm that person. Still, they're fun to play with. And see, that was probably too thick of a coat there, but that's okay because we're mostly just putting it in the shadows right now because like I said, I'm going to come back later and put metallics over that probably. But for the moment, we're just going to keep going. And we're getting close to me being done here. I'm not going to worry about the base in this video, and I'm not going to show you how to paint metallics because that's just painting, and I'm sure you can paint metallics. I have faith in you. I'm mostly just rambling here. Don't really know what to talk about. You got anything you want to talk about?
Some other things that they said. I know you mentioned that you should prime. They didn't actually specify light colored primer, but I imagine that these would not work well over dark colored primer.
I wonder what they'd look like over a zenithal.
Yeah, I don't know. But they said it's best on prime minis, and part of what I want to try, probably first, is whenever I get a hold of the hot seat, is I have a lioness that is just regular bones. She has been washed and dried, as you do, but not primed. So we're going to see.
Alright, I'm going to do one last thing before I turn it over, and I'm going to add some darker red into the skin. Blood-kissed red. This is the only other red in the kit. So we'll see, it's not a kit, in the set so far. We're going to see if I can put some of this red down. It might be challenging because some of this paint's still a little wet. So I'm going to be a little gentle here, and I'm just going to try to put some of this red into places where I feel like there should be darker shadows, because this is a darker red. So we're getting like under the arms. And let's get some up under the chin. The paint there under the chin is pretty wet, as you might expect. See, probably some on the insides of the legs here.
I've also heard from others. Now, I'm not really sure where this came from, but it's definitely making the rounds on the Reaper's Discord and on the forums about how they do not recommend mixing them, and they do not recommend thinning them. We have inadvertently, without knowing better, done both these things, and I haven't noticed anything, but no ill effects, right?
I was able to mix blood-kissed red and the gilded yellow just fine and get that orange color for the goblin's shirt. That's really the only...
You said you did mix it with regular white paint once too, though.
Yeah, I mixed it with regular white paint to do the gray. But black and white is not... That's not complicated mixing 9 times out of 10. So...
I just wonder if that's what they meant by don't mix these, as if, like,
don't
you
mix
them with regular paint and they lose their properties.
I mean, that's probably true, because most of the properties are probably coming from the medium. So when you dilute that medium, then, yeah, it makes sense that you would lose. Alright, so I've just added a little bit of the bone color over the top of that spine that we talked about earlier. And, I think that we're probably done with this, and I will pass it over to Kristen, and she will start her own, and we will come back to this at the end, and you can see what it looks like dry. Should I do the claws real fast?
It's up to you.
Yeah, let's just we're gonna take some of that bone color, and I'm just gonna touch the claws with it. That way they're just a different color. I suppose I could do them black, but I'd have to get another color out on my wet palette. And I'm trying to go fast. Alright.
Switch.
So this is what we look like right now. It's kind of doing its thing. You can tell it seems like where I put the darker red has kind of blended into the lighter red, and it's worked. I was not super careful or super precise about any of this, and overall I think I was done with this pretty quick. So we will come back to it, like I said, at the end after she has got a chance.
Pick up your wet palette for me, please.
I don't want to use my wet palette, huh?
I don't really want to use a wet palette at all. So
I will say I found using a wet palette to be a good idea here, because like I said earlier about them having a hard time doing their thing, they're soaking into recesses if the coat's too thick. So I found that using a wet palette helped keep that from happening.
Alright, so I'm going to try a test with the Lioness first. And remember, it said the Lioness has not been primed. It is just a washed Bones miniature, and I know that regular MSP paints from Reaper will do that just fine. But I don't know. So I'm putting out a couple of colors. Lioness is really, really, really simple. So I have their Gilded Yellow, and I'm going to put down the Bone Shade second. This is a very gray brown kind of color, and then I'm going to get out the Chestnut Brown, which is also a poor name because Reaper already makes a Chestnut Brown actual paint. I don't know if it's actually been retired or not, but we will see how this works. So yeah, and I'm just going to put it on and see what happens. She's a light gray, but
as a note, this is regular Bones. It is not the classic Bones that's white, and it is not the newest Bones that is black, Bones Black, nor is it USA, Bones USA, which is actually not really Bones, but Siocast.
well, the regular Bones is like this is. Just has a little bit of gray color in it as opposed to the white. But they did mess with the formula just a tiny bit, I think, to make it a tiny bit more receptive to details. But it's basically classic Bonesium, as they would say.
You can't really buy that old white stuff very much anymore, I don't think. I think they've phased that out.
Yeah, most of it's going to be older, I think. But that's neither here nor there. So I'm just kind of slapping down a really thick, dirty coat of yellow. And then going against the grain because I want to be different, I am going to try to put some of these other colors in the shadows. So I'm just going to pick up some of this, and we're just going to blend while it's still very wet. I don't know if the Bones color was the correct one to use, but that's the one I picked up. So
the bone color is weird to me because I think of bone as being like an ivory color, like a white with some like yellowish browns in it, whereas this is more of a grayish brown color, which, I mean, I suppose there's bone out there that's like a grayish brown color, but it just doesn't feel like bone to me.
Am I doing okay? I haven't done this thing with the camera before, so this is new. And this is just kind of a really quick and dirty video anyway.
So we're testing here to see if not only if it works on a unprimed bones, but how the wet blending is going to work with this, because we're doing lots of wet blending here.
So I think I'm just going to let her dry. I've done one side with the chestnut brown kind of mixed in as well. And this side is mostly just the yellow and gray. Like, what do you suggest? Do you think
want to smooth that little edge
let's smooth this, because it was really quick.
Yeah, just for the sake of. So we can set that one aside while you work on your demon and come back to it.
So yeah, she's really wet. She has some more brown on this side. I think I like that brown addition. Maybe I do it on both sides. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a little yellow in the first place for a lioness, but we're working with the colors that we got, so no judgment.
Alright, so we're going to add some of that brown kind of on the top, the underside of things. There.
Okay.
So.
Your wet blend's a lot better on one side than it is on the other.
Oh, I know. But
it's a test mini.
Yes. And, I feel like for a test mini, it's stuck.
Yeah.
The paint is not... We'll see how it is after it dries and if it can tolerate being touched. But the paint did go down. And it is stuck to the mini. At least for right now.
Yeah.
So, we will see.
I can already see a spot on my demon that didn't get any paint on it.
Alright, so I'm going to turn this around.
It's interesting.
This is just a plain piece of parchment paper, by the way.
We have different preferences when it comes to our painting surfaces.
So there's that Templar red. Yeah, I tend to prefer to paint more dry, I think. I've used the Reaper University and the Reaper Virtual Expo like laminated palettes, if anyone remembers those. That is basically just a piece of laminated cardstock. And I'm kind of flooding it here. I'm basically doing everything that Steven said not to do. That if you use it too thick, that it doesn't really do its thing. And I decided I would see if that's true. Because I have not used these before. Now I'm going to kind of use it a little bit more thinly over here. It'll probably end up looking a little weird. And I'm using a very cheapo plastic number 4 brush that I think we bought in like a 100 pack for $30. So nothing special going on there.
I just stepped out to check on the dogs and I'm back. So what you got going for me?
Well, I said I kind of flooded this side.
Yeah.
Doing what you said not to do, and I kind of thinned it more towards this side. And of course I'm going to have to turn them around and do the back. But just kind of working my way around.
Yeah. A little bit of a test here.
Yeah, and I want to use another color on like the cloth bits that we haven't used yet, because we've seen a lot of this Templar red. So.
Yeah. We wanted to do this demo for everyone to show off, but at the same time we wanted these models to be usable together, so we decided to keep the skin all one color so they at least somewhat look like they belong with each other.
I am trying to be careful not to get too much paint like I just did on the other pieces, but I'm not going to fuss with it as much as you did. It'll be fine.
That is the thing with these paints. Like I said, it's a problem with any kind of paint that's like this, is that if you make a mistake, it's not as easy to fix. Now, I will say that, like, because you can layer with these paints, it's a little bit easier to put a coat over the top of something and hide a mistake, but it's not really fixing a mistake. Still, like, the market for these is people trying to do things quickly.
Alright, gonna start on the wet edge.
So if you can be relatively neat, then this might be the thing for you.
Might need to get some more out on that palette there. And I'm gonna try to avoid the bone area.
I didn't even realize it was bone until I already painted it. That's what I get for not really looking at the model before I started.
Alright, now we just have kind of his face and his ears for the red. So maybe I don't need any more.
You got the hands too.
Oh, are the hands separate? They're not gloves?
I mean, they can be gloves if you want them to be gloves. I thought that they were separate. It'd be kind of funny if the guy is not wearing a shirt or really pants, but he's got gloves on.
It would be kind of funny. Alright, and I want to try to avoid some of these little teeth.
Yeah.
Alright.
See, if I was really trying to speed paint these, I would just do the teeth in the mouth, and then I would come back at the end with white and just hit the teeth.
I mean, that's probably more practical.
But this is a test mini. We're testing things. So we're going to see if she can be accurate enough with this paint to not hit the teeth and keep the paint from flowing into the teeth.
I think it's okay.
For the moment.
Alright, hands.
It is a thing with this paint that it will move around after you have put it on the model. Especially if you used a thicker coat.
I'm just slapping it on. I am probably treating it as the people who would probably want it would prefer to treat it. Okay, so we have hands.
We have hands.
And I think that's going to be it for the red now.
Alright, so what are you moving to next?
I think I need to move to something different. Obviously, the tabard would be a good one. I think I want to try this emerald green.
Ooh. I used that a little bit on the goblin's skin. It's a pretty nice skin. Or a pretty nice green. You really only have two greens in this set. You have a lighter one and a darker one. Just like the reds, you have a lighter green or red and a darker red.
Alright. So, I think I have still a bit of water left in my brush from rinsing the previous color out. So, this might be a little thin.
Just realized that these guys are going to resemble the Power Rangers when everything is said and done.
I think that's fine.
We're going to have Power Ranger demons that are all different colors.
And you see the red there is going to taint that a little bit. It's going to still show through the green, but I think that's fine.
It all depends on what you're looking for. You know, if you're just trying to get these done quick so that, you know, you're the DM and you can throw them on the table and your players can kill them in 5 seconds and you can wonder why you spent an hour painting each one, then, you know, maybe these speed washes, super washes, maybe these super washes are the thing for you because you can get stuff done as quickly as possible.
It really is running around on me. I think that I do have a little bit more water in my brush. I didn't dry it super well after rinsing my brush off, so this is like really pale. But it is doing its thing. You can kind of see in the recesses there. It is darkening, but of course whenever I turn it over, most of it has run to this side and has pooled down here. And it is kind of pooling up in his groin area because it is more liquid. But it's an interesting observation. Alright, I think I'm going to go back with the chestnut brown for my leather instead of the leather brown since I already have it out. And I'm going to put that on his belt and flank areas and probably his cuffs also.
Kind of doing the same thing I did but with a different brown.
Yeah.
Sounds like a plan. So I used leather brown, and you're using chestnut brown. And like I said, the bone shade also to me kind of feels like a brown, but like a gray brown.
I mean, it's sitting right here on the parchment paper, so.
So we kind of have 3 browns in this set, which people who love brown will like. I have to wonder if there's some kind of skill method to where you start painting with this stuff so as to maximize or minimize the effects of the pooling. You know, if we had started with the tabard, could you have turned it or moved it around in such a way to, I don't know. I wonder if there's alterations to the process that you could do that would make the pooling more or less relevant.
Just slowing down a little bit here, making sure I get it all. Also, to see if that would improve anything.
The paint on your palette is very dry.
I mean, that's kind of the way I like it.
It's the way that you like it, but I don't think it's the way these paints are meant to be used. So it'll be interesting to see if it continues to flow properly.
I think it wants to focus on my hand and not the mini.
I hope this is still recording. We don't really know what we're doing.
I think it is. We'll find out. Alright, and then I'll probably get into the bone shade again, and I think this one actually, like, thins out, if that makes sense. Like, applies lighter than it looks. All of these look super dark, I think, on the palette.
Yeah, to the point where it can be kind of hard to tell them apart sometimes. Especially the darker colors, the darker greens and reds and browns. When you put them on like a blob just on your palette, it just kind of looks like a blob of dark.
Turn it under. My red is mostly dry now, except for the thicker parts.
Well, you were very thin with your coat.
Fairly. And I've missed some places, like in his fist.
It's easy to do that with these paints, to miss things. Like I was saying, when you first started, I looked at mine that I had just moved out of the way, and I can see a spot that I missed. I think part of that is that the paint
bone
doesn't flow the way you're necessarily used to.
We're just going to lay that out pretty thick, kind of messy, not really caring about the red. Horns too.
Okay.
What?
I'm just saying okay.
You're judging.
I'm not judging. You're playing with this for the very first time. I have gotten to paint 2 or 3 models with this beforehand and messed around with it on the palette.
Oh, I just touched the green with my finger a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can get out just a tiny bit of this bone shade color. No, that's way too much.
So I will say this about it. I found that you can actually line with this stuff pretty well, because it flows pretty nicely and it's got some decent pigment in it. So I was able to do some lining with it pretty well and easily.
I'm kind of off to the side. I'm sorry. Not good with the camera. Not good with the paint. I'm just we're struggling today.
Well, you're doing fine with the paint. You're doing fine with the camera too. Honestly, it's hard. Normally, you're the one watching me do this, and you're always yelling at me about the camera. It's hard to stay in camera focus and everything. You can definitely tell the side that you put a heavier coat on and the side you put a lighter coat on.
Yeah. I feel like maybe heavier was better.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's personal preference.
Yeah.
I don't think you had the problem that I had when I did the cape of the
And that
other mini.
This green is almost mint.
Yeah.
And I can see I totally missed the entire inside of this leg. But, yeah, I've done one. What do we think?
I mean, what do you think?
I kind of think I want to get out some more red and see if I can touch up these areas and see if it has an additive effect. Because most of this, exception of the really dark areas over there, is kind of dry. There's not very much shine left on these parts. I mean, the back is what I did last, but there's not a whole lot of shine left on some of the thinner areas. So I want to see if it has like a darkening additive effect if I add a second coat.
Okay.
It'll probably make it not work as intended, but we're going to try.
I think you might be surprised. I think as long as your coats are thin enough, I think it'll still work as intended.
Alright, so loading it up pretty good. I'm going to start with the areas that I missed. Down here by the feet. And I'm just going to kind of keep it. I'm going to do probably the lower half of his legs with 2 coats. And then I'll probably call it.
And once we're all done with these, which, I mean, we're getting pretty close to being done with these, we will post pictures and put them on Instagram.
Yeah, we can be found at like Better Half Hobby pretty much everywhere.
And we're trying to be more proactive with that and getting more posts out there.
So touching up, like you're not supposed to do that, but doing it anyway. Because there's some areas that are like I didn't hit very well. Like under his chin.
So these aren't the most detailed models, but they do have a lot of sculpted musculature. Every muscle has like little bundles of fibers and stuff in it. So I think they kind of work pretty well for this, especially with the red, because you can really see it flowing into all the little cracks and crevices.
Alright, I think I'm going to call him done. He's going to have some pretty light calves, or quads, I think.
Okay.
But I've done that second coat on his lower legs. I did not paint that at all. Let me put some bone there just so it has some color. This little triangle piece on either side of the tabard.
Okay.
Get off the green. Stop that. Said I was going to do it quick and dirty and not touch up anything, but I did not like that. So, but yeah, I think he's got some major pooling in the middle of his back. It's doing its thing.
What's your verdict on it? Do you like him?
I don't know. I think it would require more futzing, more testing.
Would you use them instead of regular paint?
I love my regular paint, so I don't know.
I mean, we have always kind of been more traditional style painters. We've not really been using contrast paint since they came out. We don't do a whole lot of stuff with the airbrush. We do a little bit with the airbrush, but not a lot.
So I think this is fine. I don't know if it'd stand up to a lot of handling, but it's clearly not rubbing off.
Well, and for like a 30-second wet blend, it's not terrible.
I just mostly wanted to see if you could use it on unprimed minis, because I know that there are some people who like to prime their bones and some people who don't like to prime their bones, and Reaper will tell you you can do whatever you want, just don't spray them with an aerosol can.
I think maybe the unprimed, or the primer thing with these was said because they want you to use them over a white base coat.
Maybe. But it stuck to a washed with soap and brushed with a toothbrush, cleaned Bones Mini.
Which, if you don't clean your Bones Minis before you paint them, whether you prime them or not, you probably should clean them.
I mean, Bones is already a little bit hydrophobic, so while you can put down a fairly thick coat of initial paint instead of a primer, yeah, it'll want to repel the liquid just a little bit. So, anyway, do you want to come back and have anything to say? Do you want to examine these, and what do you think?
Yeah, I want to look at what you've done and see how mine is dried, and we'll close it out, and we'll finish these minis up. We'll paint the bases, maybe do a little bit of the gold or silver or whatever we decide to do, and then we'll post them on Instagram. We won't do that much more with the speed paints, though, to keep it kind of true to the video and the process.
Super washes.
Super washes, not speed paints, super washes. Okay, so this is the one I did. You can see that, like, under the chin there, it's still a little wet, and we've got a lot of pooling here and kind of all over the tabard area. Especially, I don't know how well y'all can see it, but in there under the leg on the side of that tabard is completely flat, and you can see that it's just pooling like crazy in there. And on this side too. And then we got a lot of pooling here, but that's because there's only really one. It just goes down and up, and so it's just all pooled there. Most of the musculature and stuff has stayed more or less the same color, but we do have quite a bit of definition in the more extreme shadows. And my quick wet blending of the darker red into the lighter red seems to have played out and worked pretty well. The spine's a little bit boring. If I had not painted it red first, I think it would be more dramatic. But once again, I gotta say, the bone color I don't feel is actually a bone color. I feel like bone is like an ivory. It's a white with some yellow browns in it, whereas this feels like a brownish gray.
Kind of like a weathered wood or something, like an old graying wood.
Yeah, something like that. So what I'll probably do here to finish things off is I will use that the Superwash Nox Black, and I'll do the base. I'm not going to do that on camera. What the hell, I will do it on camera. I was going to say I wasn't going to do it on camera so that I wouldn't make a mess and not have anything to hold on to. But I'll go ahead and do it on camera. And you know what? What I'll do too is I'm going to water this down with just one drop of water. That little thing there to one drop of water. So it's probably two or three parts paint to water. And we're gonna put that there, and we're gonna paint the base with it so that you can see that yes, you can water it down. And when you water it down, it actually kind of lives up to its name of being a superwash.
And we found that too with the minty green tabard, because it's so pale. I also think that maybe we should go through and show all the colors, just maybe even in their bottles, and lay them out before we go.
Yeah. Okay, so you can see how well that went down there and how well it turned out. So we'll put him aside and we'll let that happen there. All right, so
you can probably just go ahead and do the same with mine unless you think he's too wet.
Yeah. I can do that real fast. Using your not a wet palette.
I mean, it's just a piece of parchment paper. It's something to put paint down on that's not going to get everything messy. Though I do love those laminated palettes for some reason.
Alright. So that's those two bases done. And we'll, like I said, we'll paint the metallics off screen and post them on Instagram. Alright, so what we've got here is we've got the emerald green. That is the color that we used for this guy's tabard. And it's kind of a minty green. Although
I don't think it's supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be a really vibrant emerald green.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the thicker you make the coat, the more, the darker the green you're going to get. This is dark bow green. This is the dark green that that we did not use in this video.
Color balance.
This is Tempest Blue. It's
Didn't have it on camera at all. You might want to zoom out, maybe. There we go.
This is Tempest Blue. It's almost an ultramarine blue. We have Drow Violet, which is what I used on this guy's tabard. There. I'm gonna go ahead and fix this right here because it's driving me crazy to look at this little white spot in his palm and not fix it. Okay. We have Mythos Magenta, which I haven't really used, but depending on how thick of a coat you put down, I imagine it's anywhere from a purple to a pink. Blood-Kissed Red, that's the color that I did in the shadows of mine, and Templar Red you have seen us use a lot today. And then we have Nox Black, that's just black. If you put down a thick coat of it, it will not do the recess shading at all. It'll just be black. If you put down a thin coat of it, you'll get some recess shading. If you put a drop of water in it, it all of a sudden becomes grayish. And then we've got the 3 browns. We've got Leather Brown, which is a very just brown. We've got Chestnut Brown, which has got some reds in it, I would say.
Yeah.
And it seems like a fairly nice brown color. And then we've got the Bone Shade, which, like I said, don't really feel like it's a bone shade. I feel like it's a gray brown. But this is a personal opinion about what color bone is. So, and last we have the Gilded Yellow, which, if you note here and you look at this set, it's the only truly light color in this set. Everything else is somewhat darkish, which is interesting.
And you did mix these for the orange.
Yes, I mixed that yellow and the Templar Red for the orange, and I made this orange here, which, I mean, it's not the most beautiful orange ever created. I'm going to zoom in here. It's not the most beautiful orange ever created, but it is orange, and it did still flow and recess shade. Those little bits of highlights that you can see in there, I went back and re-highlighted up with the yellow afterwards. So that yellow, those little bits of yellow that you see there are not part of that orange that I made. So that's what came in the box, is 12 paints, 2 reds, 2 greens, a black, a yellow, a blue, a violet, a magenta, and 3 browns. So that's what we got. My verdict on it is that, to me, it seems comparable to Army Painter Speed Paint, but it's not glossy and it does not reactivate. So if you like that product, but you went, oh man, I don't like Army Painter stuff because everything they make is glossy, or oh man, I don't like Army Painter Speed Paints because they reactivate, maybe the super washes are for you. So that's what we got for you.
This has been Better Half Hobby, and hope you enjoyed suffering through our quick and dirty video, and hope you found it useful. Thank you.
Thanks.